if you're deactivating say projection of UTA and you mirror the resistance, which is one way to do it, and mirroring resistance doesn't do it, then you may have to do a more specific intervention that deactivates projection of UTA. If that doesn't do much, yeah, you might have to deactivate the omnipotent transference. So really, the true test is not how we know in advance, is what the patient's response tells us to do going forward. Because we can be quite confident in our own mind, okay, this is what I need to do. But if it's not triggering a psi, if it's not triggering UTA, if it doesn't make the patient tense up, then most likely we need to try one of the other angles.
Hmm.
And indeed, sometimes it's very hard to tell whether we need to work on just mirroring resistance or whether we need to deactivate projection UTA. Some things are more obvious, like the patient says, "Well, I was hoping you could do it." Okay, well that more likely is deactive. We need to deactivate the omnipotent transference, for example. Um, when you have patients who are using a passive transference, almost always we're going to have to deactivate the omnipotent transference because by being passive, they're just waiting for you to do all the work. So deactivating omnipotent transference is going to be foundational there. Um, regressive wish, I don't run into that much, but it can happen. Uh,
And there is some of regressive also in the omnipotent transference. So it's like
exactly.
yeah, it's combination.
Exactly. You have to remember, like it's like a diamond, and these are just four facets of the same diamond.
No.
That's a way to think about it. It's the diamond that has facets, and the patient may shift facets with you. And then of
Yeah.
course the main thing that we pay attention to is which intervention or type of intervention seems to be giving the best response.
Yeah.
We've all had the experience, we do a head-on collision, we think, "Ah, that was good," but nothing happens. And then it lets us know, okay, I've got to shift. My focus needs to be different. I remember a person doing a fantastic head-on collision at a IDT conference. He was very actively doing this head-on collision, doing all these different dimensions. The problem was he was being very active with a passive patient. So his very active stance actually was supporting the resistance. So we also have to be on the lookout for that. Am I being really active with a passive patient? If I'm really being active with a passive patient,
Enactment.
it doesn't matter what my interventions are because my enactment is supporting the passivity. We can have a patient who seems to be working with you, but they're highly resistant, and they say, "I don't understand. Could you say it again?
Yeah.
I don't get it."
Yeah.
They're projecting part of the UTA, but they're projecting their capacity to think and reflect. So if you keep talking about the resistance and so on, you end up being the thinker, and the patient is the non-thinker, and by your thinking, you're subtly reinforcing the resistance. So again, the content of your head-on collision might be perfect, but insofar as you're being the thinker and the patient isn't thinking, yeah, things flatten out. And in a case like that, a patient says, I just don't understand. You might do a head-on collision to their passivity and projection of thinking. Well, then we might have to wait until you understand. We might have to wait. You're addressing passivity until you understand means, yeah, you're going to have to do the thinking, not me. I just don't get it. Yeah, I hear that. That's a very subtle head-on collision.
Mhm.
It's not your job to get it. It's their job to get it. Could you say it again? No, really, I've said it before. So, since you didn't understand what I said, we may just have to wait until you understand what you said. These are subtle ways that you're getting out of the enactment of being the thinker when they're the non-thinker. But that gives you a sense of the subtlety that what dimensions of the resistance, but also are we enacting the resistance? Usually resistance persists because we're actually helping it persist. So what happens if we're fighting, if we fight resistance, if you resist resistance, resistance persists. So if resistance is persisting, we're usually resisting the resistance. We're fighting against it. And the patient is having a conflict with you
Mhm.
rather than an internal conflict with his own resistance.
And
Yeah.
we can fight the resistance with the head-on collision.
We can try,
Yeah, yeah,
but it does mean that we then
yeah.
through enacting that conflict, that interpersonal conflict, when we enact the interpersonal conflict of fighting with resistance, our interpersonal conflict with resistance actually preserves the resistance. That's
Mhm.
why, like I'm always saying to students, drop the rope.
Yeah.
Yeah. Because once you stop fighting resistance, then the patient starts to have the head-on collision internally between his wish to get well and his resistance to become well.
Very, very helpful, I think, for everybody, all of us.
Yeah, yeah. Well, the reason the question comes up is it's a complex phase of the therapy.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Okay, so